Well, hello, good afternoon. I'm Daeho Kim from South Korea, and I think that I will give you some different point of view than the morning session and then the early afternoon sessions, I think. And then the question is concentration in industry structure in video and platform. Is it a problem or not? What do you think? Is it a problem or not? It's just a trend or a problem? So I'll give you my opinion on these questions. But before that, I will give you. Yes, I'll give you very briefly the project finding. Here, the project finding means that tomorrow's conference is on the media concentration all over the world, and then from that project, we have several points that which is related to this topic. So let me introduce some very brief findings from these questions, and then from these findings, it was revealed that the platform was declined. For platform media, the top company lost about 0.5 of market share each year, and also the concentration trend of platform media shows a decline by minus 0.6% per year, while content media rose by around 3%. I think this trend will continue because video platform changed to online, and also the digital platform is commodified. Commodification of digital platform was accelerated, as you know, by this commodification trend. Entry barrier to the market is lower and lower again. Unlike pay broadcasting, like cable, satellite, IPTV, which have dominated the way to screen by license so far, digital platform opened the market. And then there is open to everybody for entering this digital platform market. And also, as a result, online video platform market is highly competitive. So competitive market. And for this market, incumbent video platform provider, cable provider, IPTV provider, even terrestrial broadcasting providers are entering this video platform provider for the market. And also we have network provider. They are entering fiercely in this market as well. And social network service provider, internet service provider, internet commerce provider even these days, like Amazon or from Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu from China, and every players from all over the world now entering this market, even content provider as well. So every players compete each other fiercely in order to get some share of this market. Even some players want to dominate this market. There are so many cases for this. Content in America, content providers such as HBO Now, Showtime, even Nickelodeon provide their contents directly to the consumers on their own platform. YouTube also something like that. There are so many cases on these issues, like Amazon, as you know. I don't mention that because you all know that. And from China, for instance, everybody is talking about Alibaba these days, but in terms of media and telecommunication and social media, Tencent is very important. So, for instance, this is a very short time during the last couple of years, the Tencent is expanding their media businesses quite a lot, from game, music, of course, online video, many things. So Tencent is emerging as a dominant player in online video platform service. in China. And then this emergence influenced a lot to Asian market. For instance, in Korea, Tencent tried to get some contents to provide their provide the contents to their platforms. They try to merge or they try to buy some content players from outside China. So, for instance, Korea is one of the target. So Tencent is now buying Korean market or is investing huge money to dominate some part of some production of content in Korean player. And also Tencent is expanding their business or investment to other countries like Japan, but in East Asia, East Asia, and in terms of content, Korea and Japan are strong, and then outside these countries, the content production is weak, like Indonesia, India, and Thailand are at present weak in breaching the gap of the content in these huge platforms. In Japan, SoftBank, yes, SoftBank is transforming a cloud-based platform nowadays. SoftBank is a huge company not only in Japan but also in Asia, and then their business area is from the telecommunication, e-commerce, internet, of course, finance, marketing nowadays, media. So SoftBank is becoming a dominant the online video platform in Japan. And interestingly, in Korea, Kakao, I think, is a very newcomer. I think some of you don't know this name, this brand, because in Korea, KT, SK Telecom, and LG are the three big players, and also the Naver or NHN is popular in other countries. But Kakao is very newcomer. But interestingly, Kakao is become during the very short time is becoming a very, very influential platform, not only in Korea but also in some Asian countries. So it began 5 years ago. It began a mobile message application in 2010, but nowadays it expanded their business to not only in Korea but also other Asian countries. So only last month they told me that Kakao has around 150 million users, and also it is provided in 15 languages. And also, naturally, so Kakao is expanding their business from the social messaging services to commerce and just directly media services. So already Kakao launched the Kakao Television, Kakao TV, and then is becoming popular for younger generations. So these kind of things are happening in the online video platform market, and then that means again it's very, very competitive market. Everybody is entering. Everybody is going to this area, and in addition, platform even evolves just beyond the platform. It evolves into a network media service. Therefore, this development brings about networking of its own service, its own platform, and other platform together. This kind of the networking, increasing networking of platform can be seen in most online video platforms providers. But yes, of course, we can see this kind of new relationships in Facebook. Of course, in Chinese, the Alibaba or Tencent or Baidu, in Korea's Kakao and NHN, everywhere we can see this kind of new emerging networking of their own platform and other platforms together. So as a result, more media service distribution is possible, and consumers use more contents than before. So to simply put, platform ecosystem is very complicated and very complex. in this situation, actually, naturally, the online video platforms' influence is huge, very, very huge in media industry and not only media industry, but also in all the ICT sector together, I think. And many impacts can be addressed by these new online video platforms. The first one is that now incumbent pay broadcasters mainly are now in crisis. Yes, we are suffer from crisis. And as you know, already in the morning session, that cable television market changed a lot to respond to this crisis. Likewise, in Korea, in Japan, same situation happened. Cable operators are now in crisis to respond to this new situation because of these new strong competitors of OTT, mobile video apps like that. And interestingly, this year, one of the most influential and largest MSO in Korea are now on sale. But nobody's not interested in this MSO. Previously, just 2 years ago, telcos like SK Telecom or Kakao or NHN were interested in buying the this cable MSO. But just only 2 years after, situation has changed. So even the telcos and internet service providers do not show any interest in this the largest MSO now on sale, because they said instead, yes, OTT, yes, mobile video apps are more appealing to the consumer potential buyers and consumers. So yes, this impact are huge for the traditional or conventional media service providers. And also, secondly, they initiate new market and business models. Because as we all know, all of you know, I think, digital music market has been replacing conventional music market. Game market is also same. And interestingly, in Asia, webtoon market is emerging a very new business and business sector. Have you heard about webtoon? Yes, webtoon is web plus cartoon. But okay, and previously, just a traditional cartoon or animations were provided on the web. But webtoon is different from that. Webtoon is not just the provision of traditional cartoons and conventional cartoons on the website. They changed their format, content just fixed, optimized to the mobile or internet devices. So webtoon market is becoming a new market by what? By this kind of online video platform service providers new strategy. And so in Korea and in China, webtoon market is growing, and some argue that webtoon probably is expanding to worldwidely. So these days, interestingly, in the Middle East in the Middle East market like Iran and some countries, webtoon is becoming popular to youngsters. And like that, new business model like native advertising, which is provide a combination of media product and advertising, also is in the market. Probably, as you know, because the BuzzFeed is popular with this native ad. So the new converged market and business models are coming from the new strategies from these online video platform providers. But I think that we can consider the other side of the market apart from the provider, consumer side. How about this situation from the consumer perspective, consumer side? Definitely, consumers have more choices. But the consumer's benefit is different from the short term and longer term. In the short term, online video platform give more choices. So yes, it's surely that diversification effect is for the consumers. They influence incumbents in terms of production and distribution in all the modes. So online video platform influence media industry positively in the short term. But in the longer term, the situation will change, I think. In the longer term, as shown from the findings from the project we have done, online video platform market is becoming more concentrated. So in the longer term, the impact is different from the short term like that for the consumers. And naturally, the characteristics of online market, online make globalization inevitable. Fierce competition and revenue reduction needs new places naturally. So they expand the globe globally. Technology like already cloud streaming and many things make possible very easily globalizations. Yes, Netflix. Everybody is talking about Netflix. Netflix became a global player now. At the first quarter of this year, more than a third of total subscription number come from international market already. And so Netflix are operating in Europe and South America. 23 million subscribers are from foreign countries out of its 65 million total subscribers. But Netflix is not yet in Asia. So Netflix, of course, tried to enter the Asian market. So Netflix entered into Asian market aggressively in Asia. Japan this year and Korea next year. So globalization of online video platform is very natural strategy, natural business model for them. But we are not sure that this globalization strategy will succeed or not, because in some countries, yes, but in other countries, no. In some areas, yes, but in other areas, we can see different situations. So therefore, most service providers reached the globe. So therefore, the companies compare penny unit sales by streaming all over the world versus dollar sales by album and choose which is better for them. And this globalization strategy also applied to not only Netflix, but also to other local online video platforms of, for instance, from Korea, from Japan, or China. Therefore, they compete each other in this online video market. So it is interesting, actually, for me and for some professionals in Asia, that how will Netflix do their business in Asia, Japan, Korea, and not China yet. And then it will the Netflix succeed in Korea or in Japan, and how's the next path of Netflix to the Asian market. So it will be a very interesting question for us. Again, so because originally I was assigned just 7 minutes, so I present very shortly. But in summary, video platform market concentration increase. The question, I agree, yes. But you can see difference between global market and national local market. In the global level, yes, big platform providers expanded their market. But in the national market, in the local market, you can see another players or another providers are competing with the global players. Local platform providers compete with global players. And then these local players are doing very well. You can see these examples as I said, in Korea, in Japan, and in China. So in the national national market, in level, online video platform market shows global players and local players are competing, are mixing in the market. This is the final show, so case, and in Korea's case, this is the online video market share. And you can see this online video market divided two major global platforms and two local platforms. As you can see, YouTube and Facebook. They are doing very well because many years ago, YouTube suffered from their low penetration and low subscription in Korea. Facebook as well, but they are doing very well. But even in that case, YouTube and Facebook are competing with the two local players like Naver TV Quest and Africa TV. So this kind of balance will be seen in other countries like as shown in Korea's case. And again, in OTT, one of the big OTT service player, Netflix, is not yet in Asian country, in Korea, but it is very interesting to see whether the Netflix will do very well or not, and how much they respond to the local media market and the Asian market. Okay, thank you very much for your.
Thank you. I already have some questions. Next, Raul Katz from CITI.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I like two things about first, that the panel, before getting into the prescriptive side of issues, asks whether we have a problem or not, which I think is very encouraging because we obviously need to ascertain whether there is effectively a problem derived from concentration. The other thing is that I haven't talked to Professor Kim before, meeting him today, well, after a couple of years, but he's reaching very similar conclusions on the Asian environment to the ones that I've reached by analyzing the Latin American ones. So we might be somewhat approaching truth, having two independent calibrations of the matter. Again, I'm talking about Latin America, but what you're going to see is probably very applicable to emerging markets as a whole. And I have three hypotheses that I started to test in a couple of pieces that I've been doing this year. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk 2 seconds about the subscription TV, but since tomorrow we're having one focused precisely on media, I'm going to skip this and go to the other two, and maybe if I have time, I'll talk about pay TV. But essentially, what I say on the first one is, yeah, we do have a concentrated market in the region, but that doesn't necessarily mean that its concentrated structure is leading to some sort of a collective dominance in the form of tacit coordination between two oligopolies, so to speak, and negative consumer welfare. In other words, prices are declining, product variety is increasing, diversity in channels is growing, and yet we have a high level of industry concentration. So we have to grapple here with the notion as to whether concentration in and of itself is the problem, or whether we need to address it at all, or what do we need to address in pay TV. The second issue is more related to video streaming, and there I link up to Professor Kim's, where I basically see a very long tail of content diversity in local players. And while Netflix has been quite a bit praised about the traffic it generates on an international basis, I would certainly say that if they're betting their growth on international, I would probably short the stock, because there's a lot of threats and fragmentation of players going after Netflix based on content variety, and it's going to be very difficult for a single player operating on a global scale to provide that kind of variety on a country-by-country basis or region-by-region basis. Now, the third item is search and digital advertising, which sort of addresses the Google phenomenon. And clearly, we're talking about a highly concentrated market, basically a winner-take-all configuration with very strong network effects and economies of scale. And that's very difficult to go after a Google basically saying we can displace them. I mean, the scale on both the demand and the supply side are such that short of behaving like China, I don't think we can do anything against it. That doesn't say that a country doesn't have some options. They do. But those options remain working around and creating complements that ride on the network. I'm going to expand on that as well. So having said that, I'm going to skip very rapidly the first section, which you're going to see probably those that are here tomorrow, and jump to the second item, the one on video streaming. So these are the numbers for Latin America. What you see here is essentially, we're talking end of 2014, Netflix has 7.5 million subs. Apple TV has 1.8 million. YouTube has a lot, but obviously non-payable subscribers. And Google Play has 3 million. Now, on the other side of the ledger, you have the Latin American sites. And I'm short here because there are short approximately 300 sites right now. And as Professor Kim said, the barriers to entry on content streaming are so low that basically once you figure out the way of establishing a catalog and some sort of a guide, you're in. And multi-homing costs, the notion that one is faithful to a platform because we've invested something in that platform that makes us switching very expensive, is very low. Because no matter what Netflix has done on the recommendation engine, that's not sufficient to create some sort of a barriers for switching. So you have everything and their mother coming in, and you have from the media conglomerates to governments that flex their libraries of local movies that have been made on the basis of government funding, to the mobile players, to pirating sites. In fact, that explains the fact that this number of Netflix is not growing very fast because of the alternatives. And there's no way, by virtue of the fact of what Netflix exploited when they were fighting Blockbuster, based on the long tail, it's not applicable on a local basis, which is why I think that I would be very leery about the long-term success. Going beyond that, what happens to YouTube and the 71 million subs? Well, that's very interesting because this is the theory of complements. I mean, YouTube, as you see, is the site that is most popular among visitors of online video. But what happens is that a lot of local sites create their channels based on local content. Let's call it complements in terms of strategy terms. They create their complements, and they're using YouTube as a platform. So in that particular case, it's a different concept. YouTube is actually offering itself as a platform for local content developers to diffuse their content. Now, there's a second issue, which is to what extent, who's capturing the rents in the profit pool? The local channels or YouTube and Google? But we're going to get to that in terms of revenue shifts and profitability shifts in the value chain. But nevertheless, this is a different kind of an animal from a Netflix one that is creating some sort of a walled garden, so to speak. Now, this notion of the fact that you have local content that is flexing out the indirect network effects to establish dominance against someone that comes from outside exists in other sectors and platform industries in Latin America. This is e-commerce. So in e-commerce, what you see is the sort of like darker green, the international sites. You see Alibaba, Walmart, eBay, Apple there. This is measured by number of unique visitors. The top one is a local site developed in Argentina and now expanded regionally. And then the rest is, like there's a bunch of Brazilian sites. The Brazilians have been amazing in terms of developing electronic commerce. So this is another case of indirect network effects that are powering these sites, and the international ones cannot actually fight by virtue of what is it that they're offering. Now, one might say, well, Alibaba's next move, like the way eBay expanded in many countries, would be to acquire some of these. And I would say that some of these Latin American guys, having been funded by local VCs, are betting on an exit strategy that means selling to a strategic buyer from the outside. But from a dynamic standpoint, what you see is that if you're not local, as Steve O'Neill said, Ed, you cannot win in these markets. So we see it already on video. We're seeing it also on e-commerce. So my conclusion on that particular side, indirect network effects in these two-sided markets are critical. Indirect, in two-sided markets, you have variety platforms, and local content favors platform diversity. And the same indirect effect that we've seen in the ones that I depicted could be on recruiting side. There are 50+ recruiting sites in addition to LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is a completely minor player in the region. Because obviously you're looking for a job with a local company. Local companies tend to advertise in local platforms. Same effect, we call it in e-commerce. And so global platforms are limited in their capacity to actually fashion local versions, unless they recognize that they're going to be just a platform for complements developed locally. So that's my first point, and I'm totally in line with what Professor Kim said. Let's talk about the other one, the search and digital advertising. So this is a winner-take-all market. And my next slide is a slide that I give to my students. Well, actually, we solve the puzzle with the students when we look at the distance that separates Microsoft in its multiple platforms from Google on the top over there. I'm basically developing an equation that says, well, if I take willingness to pay minus the operating cost, does Google have an advantage, scale, and network effect side relative to Microsoft? And clearly, that is the case. I don't know how many of you use Bing to do a search, but that's pretty limited. And that depicts, well, we don't pay anything. That depicts a little bit our willingness to pay. And secondly, from a cost side, there's definitely a scale advantage, both in product development and in infrastructure. Google has 4 times the number of server farms that Microsoft has. And Google has 7 times the number of product development engineers than Microsoft has. And Microsoft is a guy that has deep pockets. So scale definitely drives an advantage. And now, to make things worse is the conventional network effects in a two-sided market. You have more audience, because we all go on Google, which attracts more advertisers, which in and of itself attracts more users of the search device. Simply because, I mean, even though we don't know, but 40% of searches end up in a purchasing act. So clearly, what we have is, on the part of Microsoft, a disadvantage on the economics and a snowballing effect on the network effect side, on the externality side. All these says that, in fact, Google's competitive advantage vis-a-vis Microsoft is expanding. And I'm sort of like meandering on this because basically, if this is the case for Microsoft, a 350 billion market capitalization company, think about another country. I mean, so the notion of like the French to be able to come, when they ask the question, why can't we come with the French Google? Well, basically because it's structurally impossible. That cannot be done. And just an illustration on the economies of scale on R&D, you can see definitely the scale curve works for any of these platform players in the same direction. So the next question is, if they have this advantage, are they in a winner-take-all configuration? And some of you might be familiar with this, and again, this comes from some of the classes, but basically, how do you define a winner-take-all market? Well, basically, beyond the notion whether there's a natural monopoly, which I discarded off the bat, network effects are strong, multi-platform costs are high, being that I can't use two platforms at the same time because it's too costly for me, the user or the advertiser, or there's limited opportunities to generate a differentiated product. And in fact, while in 2005, one could have reached a conclusion that the answer to this was yes, obviously, on the network effects, no on the multi-platform side, because essentially, whether we use Microsoft Bing or Google at the same time, that doesn't mean that it's higher cost for us consumers. Over time, Google has been playing this card very well, both in terms of the engine learning and on the fact that on the advertiser side, by pushing the AdWords API terms that prevent advertisers or companies to import data across platforms, they basically restrict the possibility of multi-home on two platforms. So in 2005, my answer was no to the second condition, yes for platform differentiation, but over time, Google has played its cards very well. So if there was any doubt that we were in a non-winner-take-all situation, now that's definitely the case. And when you look at the numbers, well, the numbers are here. This is the world data on search, and you can see that on a worldwide basis, these guys are keeping 75%. And if Microsoft grew, it was as a result of reaching the agreement with Yahoo, or maybe earning on the margin something from AOL and Ask. So we got a situation here where we are in a winner-take-all situation, and the second thing is then, what can we do? Is this bad? Is this bad from a concentration standpoint? Is that affecting consumers? And for that, we have to look at numbers and the value chain. So this is the digital value chain. And as you see here, I analyze it at three levels. Well, first you see at the top the different players. I call your attention on beyond the raw content, which would be the Disneys and Universals of the world, apps development, which would be the Zyngas and the e-commerce sites. Communications would be the Skype and WhatsApp when they existed independently. The aggregator platforms are the Googles and Facebooks. Equipment, we get into Cisco. Hosting portal is Amazon Web Services. Telecommunications are the carriers, the connectivity players. And terminals, well, we know who they are, the Apples and Samsungs of the world. Well, profitability-wise, the points more important in terms of the value chain, in terms of percentage, margin-wise, at the EBIT level, is the aggregators. The aggregators are doing very well. In fact, they are doing very well because they are the bottleneck entry to the internet and because they're squeezing the applications developers guys on the left-hand side. Number one, obviously they're riding on the networks as well. Secondly, on the capital intensity, obviously the networks are the capital intensive areas because you basically have to invest in all the infrastructure required to transfer the signals. And these guys, asset light as they are, they basically ride on the networks. The aggregators ride on the networks of the connectivity guys. And finally, on the effective tax rate, which is like the bone of contention in Europe right now, but reaching other regions of the world very rapidly, is what's the effective tax rate? Who's paying what? On a real basis. This is not which taxes they are confronted with, but basically what are they paying on a year-to-year basis, factoring in loss carry forwards and things of that sort. And basically what you see is those guys that have a physical presence, either the connectivity guys or the hosting portal ones, as well as the content producers, on an ETR basis are paying much more money than the aggregators. So what we have here is a winner-take-all situation with a significant distortion on the value chain, where the guys in the middle layer of the value chain is capturing a lot of the value on a very asset-light configuration. How important is that in an emerging country? So I run a pro forma of how, and this is a Facebook example, how much money are they making and what's their cost internally? I mean, notwithstanding the transfer pricing of like having an R&D workforce that is quite strong. So assuming that they're having 24,000 users, 24 million, which is a very regular price of Facebook in an emerging country, 24 million, and that they're making in advertising 86 cents per user, that gives them a total revenue of 20 million and change. This is a sales office because most of the R&D staff is concentrated in Silicon Valley. They don't do development. I mean, there are minor things they're doing in Europe, like in France and the UK, some apps, but basically everyone is there. So what they have is a sales, people that sell advertising. Generally, the staff is 40. I mean, 40, in London, they might have 200, one of the largest markets, but not more than that. So an average salary, fully loaded in an emerging market, again, that wouldn't be a London fully loaded salary, which gives a total of 2.8 million, which makes a gross income of 17 and change. How about taxes? Well, taxes, they don't pay a lot in taxes. They pay basically some corporate tax on gross profits. The problem is that what is the profit of a subsidiary that is selling ads that are actually being booked in Ireland? It's very small. It's the consulting change that the subsidiary is charging head office for the services that they provide to Facebook corporate. And the OECD has like cracked this nut some time ago, I mean 2 years ago. But basically taxes are very small. And then you have social contributions. Net, the margin is 80%. 80% on an emerging market operation. So let's add on top of this. So we have a situation where the financial muscle that a company such as Facebook has in an emerging market to drive the winner-take-all configuration is enormous. And therefore I say here, short of being China or Russia, where the cultural factors, the linguistic factors are very important, is totally lost. We can't do anything unless we sort of like do what the Chinese are doing. But what can we do? Well, what we could do is play on the multi-sided configuration of the platform. Because if you look at Facebook, Facebook it's a multi-sided business where you have obviously the users linking through the social networking application, advertisers that sell banners and less importantly news feeds and native advertising, Facebook platform that offers applications developers, and don't shortchange this one because it's roughly like 400,000 apps that can be accessed through Facebook platforms, and company pages where you know, Ford Motor Company will have its company page to communicate with the fans and the users. So what I say is, because countries cannot go against these guys given the structural characteristics of the industry, the only thing we can do as an emerging country is work on the complements, work on certain dimensions or certain sides of the market, not willing to go after one-to-one for a social network, but maybe working on the application side. And in fact, there is what Latin America is actually doing quite well. By my calculations, on video games, for instance, they are generating 237 million. On apps for Facebook only, close to 800 million. So we are close to $1 billion on complements to one of the networks. And I think that there's an opportunity there. And to go back to the Google case, they will give us a chance on us doing that because that enriches the opportunity of customizing the platform vis-a-vis the local markets. So to sum up, and I skip pay TV because I'll pick it up tomorrow, but basically On video streaming, the industry has to keep on going local. And going local would definitely propel the ability to capture an important share of the market. On the regulatory side, taxation asymmetry is an issue that has to be tackled, particularly insofar that the cable guys are pretty much at a point of disadvantage, or the local streaming guys as well, because they pay full taxes while Netflix doesn't. On the platform side, such as Google and Facebook, emphasize working on complements, which there I think we have a coincidence of interest between them and us. And, but there's clearly some issues on the regulatory side. Interoperability, fairness, privacy and data protection, which is important. The substitution effect, we have to look at that on the substitution side to see to what extent these cross-market effects that Professor Kim was pointing out are important to see at what point the definition of market is going to change, and obviously taxation distortions. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, well, we have some time for questions. While you get up there, I'm going to ask Professor Kim, you feel the same way about the future of Netflix in Korea when they come in? Are you as pessimistic?
Wow, it's it's difficult question actually, because I am serving as a outside director as the at the one of the largest broadcaster in Korea. But let me tell you just one episode that only last month in Korea there are 3 big terrestrial broadcasters. They are very dominant in the broadcasting and media market. And then actually tier 3 they sum up, and then they collaborated not to give their content, premium contents, to Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
That's the situation. That's why the Korean players are responding to the entering of the global player in their market.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, thank you.
Does
Yep.
somebody else want to go first? I asked too many questions.
You're there.
Okay, Raul, your data is fascinating. I've been trying to come to some of those conclusions. I've been looking at it in terms of Africa and terms of trade and the flow of funds. It's clear that the multinationals, such as Google and Facebook, are moving a lot of capital, a lot of money, from poor countries to rich ones, which some of us think is not a good international policy. So I've been talking to some folks about what would be the right code of conduct for a multinational corporation so they don't turn into a ugly American. And yes, I know the book was ironic. For example, I remember when a multinational such as IBM thought it was their obligation to maintain an appropriate share of jobs and pay a share of taxes in every country in which it did business. What would be the impact if, say, the US government says we don't want Africa fighting at the ITU and trying to take over the internet because you're exploiting them so much? Our big companies pay them some taxes. What would be the impact? Would it be large enough to notice?
Yeah, I mean, this gets us a little bit onto the issue of job creation, which was the subject of one of the conferences some time ago. All the platform players in Latin America employ approximately 600 direct employees. The telecommunications operators, close to 500,000. The equipment players, Cisco, Ericsson, and the like, around 25,000. Direct. This issue is not a strong job creator. However, having said that, I think that there are some things that these guys could do that would be of value to the emerging countries. For instance, deploy some of the product development labs, do some technology transfer. And in fact, governments need to be a little bit more proactive vis-a-vis that, because right now the initiative is on the part of the multinationals, and they say, well, we're going to establish an internet access point in a favela in Rio, which is fine, but that can be done by the government. What we need more is technology development capabilities. So I think that that would be a more appropriate thing. I think governments are, to be honest, is beyond the work that the OECD has done, governments are pretty blind about these effects, the understanding of the importance of local content, and they're yet starting little by little doing this, but this is uncharted territory.
It was a big thing in the aisles in Busan, Korea, at the last ITU meeting.
Make sure everyone hears you. Yeah.
Sorry. At the last ITU meeting in Busan, it actually was a lot of talk in the aisles. Nobody said so publicly, but they were looking at how the money is being pulled out. I was working with the Africans, and they all feel, I mean, they looked at me and they said, why is your country so greedy? Because I was an American. And the politics is there. Oh, the other thing to know, the total employees of Facebook in Africa, as of a few months ago, was approximately 0. They just opened their first office in South Africa, which is being mostly run out of London.
Pepper?
Yeah, so that's beside the point. Totally beside the point. You take a look at the economic impact across the economy. It's not in even the platform providers. When you take a look at the economic impact of platforms and like I don't work at Facebook. I'm not there to defend Facebook, but the local business opportunities, the business creation by local small business in LATAM using Facebook to reach their customers via social media in terms of the economic activity is not even picked up in this. Whether there are Facebook employees in a particular country in Africa is not as relevant to that country's economy as to the people using Facebook and small business in those countries using Facebook and the economic activity generated by the use of the social media. And to some extent, these arguments sort of talk past one another without understanding the economic value. A McKinsey study released last year that 75% of the economic value of connecting and using the internet accrues to traditional industries, not the telecom industries, not the internet companies, not the manufacturers and vendors of the internet equipment, but the use of it accrues to the traditional industries. So David, I mean, it's an interesting talking point, but I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding and lack of understanding of where the economic value accrues and how it's created. And I just, Raul, you actually look at these things. I'd like you to comment.
Yeah. I mean, look, it is true. I mean, and one has to itemize the economic contribution of these platforms. And on the direct side, you have basically, whatever revenue is generated and has impacted the GDP, employees, and taxes. On the indirect side, you have all the spillovers that Pepper is talking about. And on the spillovers, you can have all the indirect labor, all the indirect efficiencies, and new business generation. All these 27,000 people that are doing video games and apps. So on these platforms, you're never going to see it on the direct side, because the business model is one that says it's highly centralized. There are economies of scale. I put everything in Silicon Valley, and that's the way the model works. Contrary to a telecom company where it has to be physically deployed in order to make sense. So But clearly on the indirect side is where you see the payback. Having said that, the question that some people raise is the issue is to what extent we can reverse some of the issues of trade imbalances by generating a local digital industry that can capture some of the effects. And that's where I'm more on the side of. But this kind of discussion that we're having now, I mean, it's rampant, and some people sort of mix it up. I don't think Facebook is ever going to have more than 200 people in Latin America, because that's not the way the system works.
One sentence, may I? Robert's example there makes sense if and only if you assume that Brazil and Nigeria would not be able to develop a social network that's almost as good as Facebook, in which case the benefits would be accruing more locally.
Yeah.
And that's something we don't have time to talk about here.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a valid question. I think not, but I mean, it's a very valid question.
Any final comments?
It's for the Africa, and then, for instance, Korea has experienced to collaborate with some African countries in the telecommunication and infrastructure, because most African countries are now they are quite interested in the establishing the infrastructure. Access is a very important issue rather than profit or services. So therefore, for instance, Korean government is collaborating some African countries, including Zambia and other things, and then they are more focusing on the more access to the people rather than just get the economic activities from them. So at present, they are now in this situation.
I promised Jason I'd get us back on schedule, but Katz has a quick.
Yeah, just wanted to introduce one potential filter as we look at these issues of localization versus, economies of scale in Silicon Valley. And that's the issue of language. I mean, I'm in Africa and also currently in Timor-Leste. I'm dealing with linguistic environments that are extremely varied. Yeah. Not to say that Latin America doesn't have a lot of local dialects and so forth, but comparatively speaking, it might be less varied. And with, one or two languages, you can kind of reach most people. So I just wonder whether, and I get some signs that Facebook is beginning to realize this, and in places like Africa that if they're going to get that last billion or two, they need to produce things in local languages. They need to deal with the reality of oral literacy versus textual literacy. Forget digital literacy. So that I think the local costs are going to be greater, and in a sense, the need to establish local presence is going to be greater in these more complicated linguistic environments. Now, in the very small countries with complicated environments, we probably won't see that for a while, but in some of the bigger ones, I suggest that might start to happen fairly soon, and so we'll start to see a little more differentiated pattern.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, the linguistic thing, I mean, just to give you a talking point, Wikipedia, which is roughly between 8th and 5th most popular site in Latin America, only 3% of the articles are written in Spanish. So that gives you an idea how restricted this thing is. So if we're going to go for the next 2 million, I bet you anything the next 2 million don't speak English.
Yeah.
So unless we develop... Now, you go to Wikipedia and you say, I want to establish a lab to develop articles in Spanish. The Africans have done it. Probably good. They will take it in a song. Now we have to do it. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.